think the microphone works.
1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
All right, we are sticking it in the ground. It is Detroit, City of Champions. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
Discovering the stories. Well, I'm discovering the stories that Charles has researched and written about. The amazing year 1935 in sports, in history, in Detroit specifically, and how it all turned our city, turned the fair city of Detroit into the sports machine it is.
Yeah, one of the great sports capitals of the world was born in 1935. The history of Detroit sports, we got a lot of, when we talk about the history of Detroit sports, there's, a lot of times when you use those words, history of Detroit sports, your first thought might go to Ty Cobb. Your second thought might go to like Gordie Howe or Bobby Lane or these guys. But there's an entire chapter that happens in between all of that.
Yeah.
In that one chapter, in a single year, Detroit was changed from merely a baseball town that had never won a World Series. In a course of just 1 year, Detroit was changed into one of the great sports towns in the country. One single year.
That's it. Like I said, we're sticking it in the ground. We're dealing with golf. And
you got your Hagen Jr.
I got my Walter Hagen putter here, wood shaft. People watching it again. Thank you for listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, either on YouTube or Facebook. Or an audio listening device of your choosing. We're everywhere, man. It's like Spotify, Pandora, a couple Cracker Jacks boxes with string tied between.
Yeah.
We're everywhere. YouTube? So you can
mention YouTube.
I did YouTube and Facebook, and people watch and comment. Somebody named George was commenting on YouTube earlier. Thanks.
Welcome, George. Appreciate the comment. We like
comments.
Every person. Like we're growing the channel, and there's a lot of stuff. I see a lot of Detroit sport. I follow all kinds of Detroit sports videos on YouTube.
Yeah,
a lot of them are talking about the Lions. A lot of them talking about a little bit of Detroit. Like Tiger history, a little bit to a certain extent, but. From what I've seen, we're the only podcast that's just pure history.
Yeah,
it's just pure Detroit sports history. That's what I've seen.
Thank you. If you haven't so far, subscribe, or collect, or whatever it is on the app that you're doing, and follow along. So subscribe to it, and we appreciate you doing that. Tell a couple friends too. That's always extraordinarily.
Yep, and hit the like
helpful.
button right now. We should have one of those little graphics that's like it's got a little thumb it demonstrates if it's somebody for the visual, because I know when I'm watching a little YouTube video, if I see the little finger come up and click the button on the screen, it's it's like a little reminder, and you go, oh, okay, I'll click it, because every little like helps. It really just it helps the algorithm. Every comment really helps.
It does. So like, subscribe, leave a comment. We appreciate you. DetroitCityOfChampions.com is the website where, as I mentioned, Charles did some extraordinary years of research, pulling all these original sources together into a trilogy of books. Those are available on his website,
DetroitCityOfChampions.com, or you can come and actually talk Detroit sports to me in person. I'm at the 12 Oaks Mall in Novi, and also Partridge Creek in Clinton Township. There's a Michigan art store there called Inspire Marketplace, and I'm in one of those two stores pretty much every day.
So
so you come in there and start mentioning either baseball or Detroit sports,
and you are going to get an earful.
It's kind of like, I almost think of it's almost kind of like those barber shops or whatever, where I'll be just sitting there doing my work, and then somebody will come up and start talking about baseball or Detroit sports, and it's like everything I'm doing just gets set aside, and we just sit there and talk about stuff.
So we're here recording out of the Podcast Your Voice studios on the border of Southfield and Berkeley, Michigan, and there was a show that I helped produce. I help other people launch podcasts too, and there was a show recording earlier today, and I had he's like, well, so what podcast do you do? And I'm like, You got a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And so, I told him about the Man Cave Happy Hour, Animal Talk, and then I was telling him about Detroit City of Champions. He came back in today, and this was when we met a few weeks ago. He came back in today to do the show, and he brought some friends with him to be on the show with him. It's called the Plant Life Union Group. It's all about life on the plant floor and all the shenanigans and things that happen. It's pretty cool. They're off and having fun. But he was like, no, tell him about the championship thing.
Yeah.
Tell him. And he was like so excited about it. And I was like, all right. And they were all like, oh my God, seriously? So it was fun.
This was crazy is that it's just,
I love sharing the story.
It's this huge, it's this incredible season where you've got 33 championships. You got the first three championships, first championships for the Tigers, Lions, Red Wings, the rise of Joe Louis, all the stuff that happens out at the end with the Champions Day party at the Masonic Temple, the plaque. It's the biggest story. I mean, it's got what sports story could be bigger? What season has ever been better?
Yeah,
greater, more important, anything like this?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like this is a big deal,
right?
And we're on episode 72.
I know.
Talking
I'm
about
having
it.
so much fun. I'm not.
I know. I'm having a blast. So it's like we're on episode 72. What other seasons in the history of? I know we've said this is a common trope we've said on the show,
right?
But how many seasons do you know of?
None.
That have that are merit 72 episodes
like,
of a show to describe
like
it.
Doctor Strange.
It's only one.
Only one way.
Yeah.
Only one way.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like this is
all right,
is
Tony.
this
Only
is
one way.
Yeah, this is a huge deal, and this is for the first time ever. This show is the first time that this season has ever been explored ever.
I love
on radio. I
love how deep we're going with it.
Totally, absolutely. And we are exploring this thing step by step. And if you're a new listener, you can listen to the live shows right now, or you can also, it's all archived. It started at episode 1
and they're clustered in, the Tigers cluster and a Red Wings.
Yeah,
cluster,
we do them in order.
Tiger.
We start with we're going to circle
Garwood
back
cluster.
around. Yeah. But we've been covering it basically like step by step and going through it. And you can just see anybody that's been following along and it's been up to this point. The story is incredible, and there's so much when you dive into these individual stories, like the athletes, like we're in Walter Hagen today, and when you start to dive, dig into these stories, they're just remarkable. Like Walter Hagen, like when we're done with this, we're like Walter Hagen. Walter Hagen is awesome.
Yeah,
this is a Detroit guy.
Garwood just blew me away.
Yeah, exactly. We get to Walter Hagen, Garwood.
Yeah,
Garwood. That's what I'm saying. Like we were saying. I was saying even from the beginning that this is going to be the greatest story that anybody's. This was my favorite story of the entire City of Champions was Garwood. And Garwood, like
dude is
where do you ever hear anybody talking about Garwood?
No.
It's one of the great stories of not just Detroit sports history, but like one of the great sports stories ever told.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. So it's just, there's so much to dive down, and we got another episode today.
But we're puttering around with Walter Hagen.
Yeah.
As I got my putter here again for the people watching, you can see.
You love the putter. You found your putter.
I'm going to use
this. It's your new mascot.
I'm going to take it out. It's a drag that it's fall. People listen wherever, however. So it's fall right now. And at the end of summer. And I need to
go in the fall.
I need to get out.
Being out in Scotland golfing.
I know.
It's like
I need to
golf in Scotland. That seems like it's always raining every time I golfed over there.
I got to grab my boy and get out there.
Yeah.
So we said thanks to George earlier, and we want to say thanks to Chris. Chris checking in as well. So
hey,
thanks,
Chris.
And we're checking in with Walter Hagen, teeing it up. And the episode is titled The American Invasion.
Yes.
Last time it was he moved to Detroit. And
Garwood is a classic example of a Detroiter, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people that came to Detroit, like Garwood was not native to Detroit, but he became a Detroit icon. A lot of these people moved to Detroit from elsewhere around the country because of the rise of the auto industry. And they got into it in some capacity, and then they moved to Detroit. Joe Louis was not native to Detroit. He moved from Alabama up to Detroit for pursuing, his family was pursuing work. So that's what Detroit was in this early, in the early 1900s. Was a city on the rise, and it was attracting people and talent from all across the country.
That's when my grandfather rolled in.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So Walter Hagen is much like basically every other Detroiter of this era, which is seeing this, this new rising city with new opportunities. And he comes there of course, to be the new golf pro for Oakland Hills.
Yeah.
And so that's what we were talking about last week. We talked about last week as well, how he wrapped up the 1990, that was in 1919, and how we wrapped up the year by winning his first U.S. Open.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, so he wins his first U.S. Open, and so it's where we pick off today in 1920 is that Walter Hagen now is he's a bona fide star. He was already a star, but now he's a massive star because at this exact moment in 1919, besides the U.S. Open, there's a list of other Open championships that he had won in that same year. He won the Western Open, he won the Metropolitan Open, he won the North Open, the South Open, the West Coast of Florida Open. So it's just he's winning Open championships all around the country.
Well, in celebrity in golf changed because we talked about the war and how during the wartime they were charging admission.
That's what changed golf
to the golf matches to raise money for the war effort.
Yes.
And when they were done, they were like, well, we don't necessarily have to stop charging admission.
Exactly.
And allowing these riffraff into, and so it's like
they were letting the riffraff in because they were trying to do their good deed. And that's how they justified letting the riffraff in.
Yeah. Well,
but they're like, holy crap, we've never seen so much money come into the coffers of this country club before.
Perhaps we could keep letting the riff and the raff in and take their money. And
if we dress them up a little bit and clean them up a little bit, they won't even be such riffraff anymore.
Sure. So,
but originally,
but that changed the celebrity of golf. So he was really
the more money that comes into play, people read in the newspaper. And before the World War I, he had won the biggest tournament. That the biggest prize at a tournament was $1,000.
$20.
No, $1,000. Yeah, he won the first ever $1,000 purse. Woo! And usually the purse for a championship was made, or any tournament was made up just of the people at the club just chipping in, putting money into a hat and saying, well, come on, we need a little bit more money because we want to really bring some people in and have a prize. And they're like, we got $1,000 raised. Woo! And then in the course of World War I, Walter Hagen said he said that he himself was responsible for raising $225,000.
Yeah.
And that's just 3 years that they were doing the Red Cross, exhibitions.
So
and
really
all told, they raised $1 million.
Yeah. So this is celebrity. It
really
is.
Totally. Well, that shifted golf, and you never see, I never see it. And I did a cursory search on the internet about World War I, its effect on golf, and I don't see anything. I don't know how much people talk about this story, but it's a huge component of golf. Like, this is the era that was what was the tipping point, the trigger that turned golf from just people that are just throwing coins in a hat to pay a championship, or now it's like an actual, like, you get a payday from winning these things. Like, this is a big time payday,
and without that, we would never have the John Daly smoking a cigarette, staring down Tiger Woods.
Well, it was there's a lot of things we wouldn't have
that,
as a result. Well, there was a lot of things you wouldn't have because this is what led. This was, like I say, the turning point that golf basically became a rising, prestigious, and financially lucrative profession for athletes to engage. Walter Hagen was already talking about going into baseball before all this, and he was talking about, because there was probably more money in baseball than there was in golf.
All right, so I got lost. So what was the list of Opens he won here was it 1919?
This was 1990, the same year he won the U.S. Open.
Okay.
He won the U.S. Open, which was a national, and then he won the Western Open, the Metropolitan Open, and then the North Open, the South Open, the West Coast of Florida Open.
Okay, these are all united.
It's all around the U.S. So it's like, so you can see like the Western Open, the North Open, so there's like different opens around the country. But then he won the U.S. Open overall, the national and all four corners of the, I guess there's no the East Open, but but he won North, West, South, and then he won the West Coast of Florida Open. So he's just racking up championships everywhere he goes. Yeah. And this is all in the same year. Like, he's just crushing it. He's the number one golfer in the United States. And so in 1920, so this is the following year, 1920, the British Open comes back, and keep in mind, the World War I has ended in 1918.
Right.
And then the 1919 was the first U.S. Open since World War I began. And then 1920 was now the first year, the British Open, which is called the Open. We're saying the British Open just to kind of distinguish it. A lot of people do that. So the British Open, 1920 was the first year it was making its comeback since the beginning of World War I. So the last one was played in 1914, and Harry Vardon, whose name has come up numerous times, it was the last night British Open champion prior to World War I. And so it's a big deal. The U.S., the British Open is coming back, and for 1920, it's the first one since World War I started. So it's been 6 years since this thing happened, and Walter Hagen spends a great deal of time talking about just how big of a deal this was, especially in the British Isles.
Yeah.
The British Open was the biggest sporting event in, like, it was the one that they took the most pride in Britain at this time. Like, it was a huge deal. And so that's why the reason I title this the American Invasion is because we talked about how the US Open at Brookline, the famous, the greatest game ever played in that.
Yeah.
That, they talked about in that was the British invasion, right?
Yeah.
Harry Vardon, Ted Ray, they come over from Britain to add all this gravity to the US Open. But in this case, you have the opposite happen, because now you've got the greatest golfer in America who's won just a litany of championships. He now is going to come over to Britain to challenge these sort of same guys. But now it's like 6 years later, since the Brookline, or 7 years later since Brookline, and now he's the guy, right? So he's coming over.
I'm talking to Chris. Don't pay no mind. Pay no mind to me.
So
Chris and I are having a
you guys are doing your own little thing. Okay.
You keep telling the story.
Okay.
Chris and I had
I'll talk to the wall instead of you. You do your thing. I'll talk to the wall over here. So we got this thing going.
He said,
I
said, all right, so I'll let you
You're
in.
good. You're not.
No, I'll let you know another thing. So it was the whole, I said, Dr. Strain, there's how many people tell this story, and it's the only one.
Oh, nice.
So,
okay, that's
so
great.
he sent that, and I saved it.
So you put some meme cut screens in.
Yeah. So while you're talking and telling a story, I'm doing silly things on the video.
No, it's practicing some meme cut screens.
It is.
So anyways, so now, like I say, so Hagen is going to be the guy coming from America going to Britain. And as we're going to see in today's episode, again, the reason I call it American Invasion, it's a catchy title, whatever, but it kind of summarizes what the theme of today's episode is going to be about. Because America, in the 7 years since the Brookline championship, US Open, and 4 years of war, golf in America has been sort of like isolated. You see what I'm saying? Like, British golf everybody in Britain is fighting the war. America entered the war in 1917, of course, but in this course of time, there was quite a few things happening in America that the British had no idea.
Sure.
And so when Hagen comes over, they're going to be like, oh my God, like, what's going on?
Golf
like, it's
tees,
like,
what?
like it was like a new, like, he had the tees weren't around yet.
Yeah.
But the tees are going to to Walter
Yeah.
Hagen's the guy that popularized the golf key. Not now, but
Yeah.
we're going to get to that.
Okay,
That's a phenomenal story. That's going to be an amazing story. Hagen is in everything. He's the guy that, like, the whole history of golf, modern golf, revolves around everything Hagen is doing. That's what's so great. But what we're going to see today's episode is that the whole, like, there's so many things we're going to recognize as everyday regular things in today's golf that all started with Hagen's first trip to Britain, when they're going, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Right. Like, where, like, because golf, the seed of golf had been planted in America. Professional golf is growing up over there with an American style. You see what I'm saying? American flourish. And that's going to come back to Britain and affect Britain in a huge way. And that's really the crux of it, and it's going to revolve around this 1920 US Open.
Okay.
So that's where, that's sort of the focus today. So anyway, so Hagen, just a little kind of quick summary. Hagen was a little broke at this moment, probably too much, investments and stuff. Yeah. So he's a little short on money. So the original guy, his name is Al Wallace, who was a stockbroker, who had actually was the one that got him into the Oakland Hills Country Club, financially backed him to go to this 1920 US Open. So that's a little mention there. And then so Hagen, before he left, there was a story that he just knew. They don't know how he found out. I don't think he like followed it, but somebody either told him or something. But Johnny McDermott, who was another he was the big name guy in the in the Brookline US Open. He the American from Brooklyn. He's like the best American golfer in the Brookline tournament or US Open. He when he went to compete in the British Open in 1912, the British press like just tore him apart.
Mm.
Like just terrible, terrible stories written about him. He's like, I don't know the substance of him, but he was not treated well, at least in his opinion, by the British press. And so Walter Hagen was like, well, that's not going to happen to me. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bring my own press guy over, right? So he's got a friend named H.B. Martin from the New York Globe, and he's friends with him. And so he enlists H.B. Martin to say, well, look, even if the British press doesn't cover me well, I'm gonna have you write the real story. So at least the American press is not gonna, follow with the British press, and that's gonna make it all. At least I'm gonna get half good coverage.
So from my understanding, Rodney Dangerfield based his Caddyshack character on Walter Hagen's 1920 British Open appearance.
Could be with the guy walking around.
I don't know.
That's
not true.
That's not true.
I digress.
Hey, what Rodney? That character of Rodney Dangerfield was not based on anybody except for the genius in Rodney's brain. Okay,
I'm
like
sorry.
Rodney based that. Rodney, that was an original.
No
that was an original creation.
But he
by
shook
Rodney
things
Dangerfield.
up. He came over. He shook things up.
100%. That's what we're gonna see.
That's why.
But the thing is, the first step to shaking that up was to have his own press guy that's going to give him fair coverage for the U.S. press, right?
Right.
And so what H.B. Martin did to finance his trip, again, because Hagen couldn't afford to, he could barely afford himself, so he's not going to be able to afford to bring his own newspaper guy over the newspaper guy, H.B. Martin, has got to have his own. I got a picture of H.B. Martin too. That's one of the slides I sent you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So the way he's going to finance his mission is he is going to make a deal with a company called the Bell Syndicate. Okay. And that Bell Syndicate, what it is it was like a collection of newspapers across the country. And the idea was that he was going to send one story back for the Bell Syndicate. And then they would have the rights to publish that story in all of it was actually, I have 50 newspapers.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
So 50 newspapers would get coverage of the British Open with the number one American golfer and whether he could win that championship or not. So that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
And so they financed his trip over there in exchange for making a deal on that. And then this is one of the first examples of this type of a deal being put together. Somebody like an American athlete traveling over, followed by his own, by in essence, a press corps.
Yeah. And
then that press corps is financed by a syndication in America. You know what I mean? Where they're all paying a little bit to get the story. And then he's the one that, that are paying his bills. So it's a reciprocal deal. This is one of the first examples of this, this is 1920. And so once again, they're setting this, they're setting the precedent for this, that element of modern sports. And so Hagen and HB Martin get to New York to get on the boat, right? And then in the ship, because after World War I, there was all of a sudden the floodgates are open for people wanting to go to Europe. People have not been to Britain or France or anything in 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
So shipping, like getting on a ship just for vacations or just seeing people or whatever, it's like the hottest thing around. Like you cannot, it's like, just to get on a ship is incredibly expensive. So not only is it expensive, but they're running ships constantly. They're running ships so fast that Hagen and HB Martin, when they get to the port, their ship is left.
Oh.
And it's not because they were late. It left because it was full. And they were like, well, there'll be another one. We got to go. As soon as we can take these people over, drop them off, we can come back and pick up, and come down back with more people.
Yeah.
So they're just running ships as fast as they can. They don't care about the schedule. Right. And so Hagen and Hagen and HB Martin, they catch the next boat, which is called the Mauretania, which is a famous ship, the Mauretania. And on this ship is this woman, is an actress named Constance Talmadge. And we got a slide of her too.
Connie.
Yeah, Connie Talmadge. And so Hagen talks about in his book. What's kind of cool is it's one of my things I love about history is that, he talks, Hagen's talking about, he's like, that's where I met Connie Talmadge. She's one of the famous Talmadge sisters. One of the most, she's like the most famous actress in the country at this time. Like one of, and of course, in her career, she did 80 movies.
Oh, wow.
And that's one of the things I love about history. And it's tough though, because you see like a little side story and you're like, man, I want to look into this, and you start to follow. It's just like, it's almost like watching YouTube. You
Down
click
the
on
rabbit hole.
Yeah. You click on like hippopotamus fights or something. Hippopotamus fights an alligator. And the next thing you know, you're like, you're totally into like, you're totally, you're another planet. Yeah, so it's kind of like that with history. That's one of the things I love about it is that you just totally get attracted. So I was like, I never really, I've heard the name, I guess, but I never looked into her. And so you start to go down the rabbit hole a little bit on some of this history stuff, and she's cool. She's got two sisters that were both Hollywood actresses, and at the time they're called the Talmadge sisters, and they're just in like a ton of movies. They're superstar celebrities, and on the ship, Hagen is like, oh my God, it's Connie Talmadge.
I can't believe who's here.
Yeah, it's Connie. Yeah. And she's like, oh my God, it's Walter Hagen, the number one golfer in the world, So who knows? I'm not trying to say there was there's nobody know. He doesn't talk about the love interest in there, but he does talk about that. In fact, he made great friends with her at the very least.
Okay.
At the very least, he was fantastic. They make great friends with her, and Connie Talmadge. And so Hagen said in all of his haste to get to the ship, to get everything going, all this, he had forgot to make any type of like hotel reservations in London. And so Connie says, well, it's a good thing for you. I usually book 2 hotel reservations, and when I get there, I kind of decide which one I want to take. So I have a room at the Savoy, and I have a room at the Carlton. She goes, I'm going to take the Savoy. You can have the Carlton. So she gives Hagen this room for him to stay at. So that's what. So Hagen's like, oh, thanks. It's just kind of a great little story, like that you see these things. That Hagen's like, that's where I met Connie Talmadge. She's on a ship, and he starts, spends a little time talking about how cool she was and stuff. And so like that's one of the great things about history is Hagen is talking from a complete. This is 1920.
Sure.
This is it's a different era where most people today have never heard of her. I really did not either. I'm not trying to
And back then, gentlemen didn't kiss and tell.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you kiss her?
He doesn't talk about any kissing and telling in there either. He'll say he danced with a girl in a gazebo till dawn, and it's like, is that all you did? Who knows?
Is that code for something there, buddy?
Yeah. So he talks about her in there, and so it's just kind of a cool thing. Like if you get a chance, look up Constance Talmadge or the Talmadge sisters. It's just they're just kind of interesting,
Yeah.
So anyways, so she sets them up at the hotel at the Carlton, and then. That night, the first night that Hagen gets to London, they get their hotel room set up, and they go to dinner. And the dinner was like sort of it was a chance because Hagen arrives and he goes. There's a reporter for the Daily Mail named Bob Howard. Of Daily Mail, of course, is a British, famous British newspaper. Mm-hmm. And Bob Howard is there. He's a Daily Mail reporter, and he's there right as Hagen's like getting off the ship, saying, "Hey, can I get an interview with you?" And we'll go to dinner tonight. I'll interview you. I want to put you in the papers. Of course, you're the American, the biggest hotshot on the block. I want to talk to you. And so Hagen agrees. And so I've got a little quote I want to read about this.
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Where's our? It's a trap.
Yeah, the Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, it's a trap.
So spoiler alert, it's trap. Right? and of course,
I was kidding, but
it is. You're fun. You know where I'm going with this stuff, Jamie. We're in sync, man. I'm introducing a newspaper writer who Hagen's bringing by, to make sure he gets the right perspective.
No.
And then there's as soon as he gets there's a British reporter. He's never been there before. Johnny McDermott got, so you're following.
Yep.
And so I've got a quote for him to explain what went down with this interview. Okay. So at the station, again, this is out of the Walter Hagen story by the Haig himself. So this is Hagen's own autobiography. Mm-hmm. So at the station in London, so Dickie, which is H.B. Martin. So that's what he calls him, Dickie. So at the station in London, Dickie and I were met by Bob Howard, golf writer for the Daily Mail. He wanted an interview, and since we were busy claiming luggage, I suggested he meet us up for dinner later. So several hours passed before we were seated at a table in a popular restaurant he had named for the meeting. His first question over his lobster and beer, a combination of food as silly as his question, was, "What do you think of Deal Links, Mr. Hagen?" And Deal Links is where he's going to be playing this course. It's in Kent in London, or Kent in England. It's southeast coast of England, like on the ocean. Like on the ocean side, this is an oceanside course, and it's called Deal. And so, anyways, that's what he says. So that's what they call the course is Deal. So, what do you think of Deal Links, Mr. Hagen? I told him what he already knew, that this was my first trip to England, and of course, I had never seen Deal or any other foreign links. I explained that I had picked up a magazine on board ship which carried a layout of the course at Deal, but owing to the fact that the map did not show the undulations, I couldn't make a definitive statement. However, presuming it to be fairly flat and knowing the bogey of the course to be 78, it would be rated par 72 in our American method. Do you like to pitch and run to the green? He asked. Can you play either one? I asked. Yes, he said. I told him I preferred pitching to the flag. How do you like putting? A fast or slow green? He inquired. I prefer a fast green, I explained, because I happen to be the type of golfer whose best touch is with a putter. No one could outputt me, but I didn't tell him that. Substantially, that was the interview. He left us and we finished dinner and returned to the Carlton. I was looking forward eagerly to making a few practice rounds at Deal the next day. I had high hopes of taking that famous British Open Cup back to the United States with me. So that's the night that he arrives. That's
then Rita Skeeter gets back to the.
You want to read the headline from the next day?
Rita Skeeter had her way with it. And,
So-
what's it say?
So here's the headline from the very next day.
Oh, God.
Cocky doodle doo. Walter Hagen, boastful American champion, is boyishly confident of winning the British Cup, which only once in its history has ever left British shores. Hagen says that no golfer should be over 72 around Deal. He intends to show us how to play the game, and he prefers to pitch to the flag so close he doesn't have to putt. But he is going to putt to prove he can putt. That's the headline. That's the intro to the article. So nice coverage of him. That's the coverage he gets.
Did you even listen to me?
Did you even listen to a word I said? So that's the coverage he gets.
You pull a Mitch album and have this written before you came out.
So that's the coverage he
Ooh,
gets when he first lands there. And so it convinces him immediately. Well, I'm glad I brought my own reporter now because this is the only way I'm going to get a fair shake, right?
Yeah.
So there is a whole section here where he talks about he actually was pretty upset about this and about that whole thing. And so what was interesting is that he knew the editor, the owner of the Daily Mail from this time, whose name was Lord Northcliffe. He had, and we'd mentioned, I think we actually briefly mentioned him earlier, but he knew Lord Northcliffe, and he actually went to Lord Northcliffe's house.
Can somebody run this message over to Lord Northcliffe?
Yeah,
you're a dick.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. That's what he did. And he went to Lord Northcliffe, and Lord Northcliffe went golfing with him. Yeah, and so he's basically goes, "Hey Hagen, the British Open's really important to us.
Come on.
The British Open's really important to us. We gotta, we can't have you come in here and we're super nice to you. There's a lot of resistance to you and everything. We don't like people trying to take our British Open.
Come on, let's go golfing.
Yeah. So he goes.
There's beer on the golf course.
Yeah.
What kind?
Yeah.
He's like, Thor. What kind of beer?
But it's just kind of awesome that he's like, he's like, do you know who you're writing the story about? I'm friends with the owner of your paper. So Hagen knows. So go, like you said, he goes to the guy's house. They go golfing together. They probably have some drinks. Northcliffe's like, hey, man, it's just kind of the way. They're gardeners. There's your big story and all this. We're trying to put stuff out. So anyways,
with all due respect,
so the guy ended up putting a miniature retraction in the paper, which sort of retracted a little bit. So there was a little bit of a happy ending to a certain extent.
Cool. Yeah.
But Hagen's like, well, good thing he knew the owner of the paper and all that, right? Because otherwise he's getting beat up, and he's good thing he's got his American, because he's like, this is within the first day he's got off the ship, right? The first day he's got off the ship. So
I want to go back. I want to drink some champagne with the actress.
So
again.
we're going to see this is going through. This is kind of a, this is not going to be an easy, story to get through. So anyways, so Hagen wants to go and practice that this course to get a use of it. But you had to be invited to practice there for anything besides the U.S. Open. He got the U.S. Open invite, but he didn't get an invite to go practice there.
All right.
So he didn't get to go practice practice there prior to the course, right?
And a links course,
over
England, Ireland, compared to courses here in the States that call themselves links courses, those are two entirely different.
That's what he's saying in there.
It is a map is not going to tell you. The craziness that is a true links course.
Well, that's what Hagen's saying. I wanted to go play in this course, but I couldn't do it. They didn't invite me.
Yeah.
So he couldn't even go practice on it.
Yeah.
So it's like, that sucks.
Anyone over there is going to give you a good impression of holy crap.
Well, not one. I mean, this is one that's on the ocean side, the wind and all this. And so he didn't even get to go practice there. And so instead, he kind of got roped into doing this exhibition. He was he's fine to do it. He wanted to get his game going and all this, but he wanted to really go to Deal.
Yeah.
And so
what's the deal?
Yeah, so he wants to go to Deal, and one of the reasons besides just practicing is that the three greatest British golfers are there. They're practicing. Right. And he wanted to go there to not only just practice, but he wanted to watch these guys.
He did. He did that with somebody else. He like really was
Harry Vardon.
Yeah,
that's the guy, and that's the guy. But he didn't get a chance to watch Harry Vardon in the Brookline because he left. Remember at the end of the tournament before the final shootout, everybody else was rolling into Brookline to watch the famous last day, the tiebreaker game, set. And he's so mad at how he missed out by just a couple of strokes that he actually just took off and missed the whole final day. So but he was most mad, of course, because he didn't get to watch Harry Vardon. But in this case, so the three greatest golfers in the world, Ted Ray was good, but he wasn't one of these three. So there's a guy named James Braid, Harry Vardon, of course, and John Henry Taylor.
All right.
So James Braid had won this British Open 5 times.
Wow.
Harry Vardon had won it 6 times.
Hey.
And John Henry Taylor had won it 5 times.
Wow.
So if this is what's cool, I was going to put a graphic of this, but I figured anybody could just look this up. If you look at I just went to Wikipedia to look at the who won from 1894 to 1914. You just look at the list of British Open winners.
3 different people.
Yeah, if you look at the British Open winners
2 guys
on Wikipedia for just the history of British Open winners.
Yeah.
When you get between 1894 and 1914, quite literally all you see, they show the first and second place finishers for the British Open. And it's one of these 3 guys, whether it's first or second place, it's one of these 3 guys for every single year from 1894 to 1914. There's a couple of holes,
sure.
There's but otherwise it's it's crazy. You're these guys are British Open masters.
Yeah.
That's all they do is win British Opens, and they're practicing on.
Is
Deal.
the British Open always held at?
No, it rotates.
It rotates.
They hasn't been in Deal in a long time. I don't think it's been there since. It might have been one more after this, and it hasn't been a Deal again since.
Right.
They have a lot of tournaments there, but I don't think
British Open's Augusta is always hosts.
Yeah, no, this one has not.
Right, so
I don't. Yeah, this was So at the time it was big, but
okay.
So anyway, so he that was one of the reasons he wanted to go was to meet these guys. But instead, so he gets kind of roped in to do this exhibition, and there's an American golfer named Jim Barnes who's very, he was in his day with Hagen, he was a big name golfer too. Jim Barnes, he would end up winning a British Open a couple years after this, cool. but Jim Barnes was a big name too, and so Jim Barnes and Hagen would form a foursome. He would golf versus a Scottish guy named George Duncan and an English guy named Abe Mitchell, two big name, fairly big names. They weren't in the triumvirate of these 3 British golfers that we just mentioned. But so this set of 4 would golf together. And so it's a little interesting story here about that Hagen talks about, and this is what we're getting into, the influence of America on golf in Britain, right?
Okay.
So the exhibition he keeps calling it Coombe Hall. It's called Coombe Hill. So Coombe Hill is this exhibition. I'm not sure where it's probably nearby Deal in some capacity, but so anyway, so he starts off saying, the gallery at Coombe Hill where we played the match was amazed at the American way of putting backspin on the ball. When I did this on one hole in the early part of the match, George Greenwood, an old-time English golf writer, commented that it was only an accident. Jim explained that he frequently did the same thing and proved it with a shot. So Jim Barnes said, I frequently do the same thing and I'll prove it. And he did it with a shot.
Watch.
Yeah. And so, but Greenwood refused to be convinced. So George Greenwood, an old-time English golfer, said it was only an accident and refused to be convinced after Jim Barnes says, I do it too. We're these 2 American golfers and this is what we do. So he's putting backspin on it to get the ball to roll back, right? But Greenwood refused to be convinced, believing it to be some sort of magic we exercised. So at first he says it's an accident. At first he's like, it's an accident. And Jim Barnes like, no, it's not. I just did it again. And he goes, Hagen did it first. And he goes, that was an accident. And Barnes goes, no, I did it too. And he goes, well, it must be magic then.
Yeah. That's,
that's the only
reasonable explanation at this point would be magic.
Well, it was an accident. No, it was magic then, So a year later, Jock Hutchinson, the first American by choice pro to win the British Open, startled the gallery at St. Andrews by making the ball take a spin and come back a few feet. So the gallery at St. Andrews, they see the ball roll backwards, like, oh my God.
It's like the mystery spot.
Yeah, it's
the ball rolling up.
I would compare it to the first. Have you ever seen Semi-Pro, the movie Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell? When they first do the alley-oop dunk, right? Have you seen that movie? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So they do the alley-oop, and then the whole crowd goes, oh my God. And then like the ref's whistle drops out of his mouth. They've never seen an alley-oop dunk. It's like 70s, it's like 1970s basketball. So I compare this, the making the ball roll back, you know, on the backspin on the ball is like the first alley-oop dunk. And they go, he said, look at this. Look at his words he used. A year later, Jock Hutchinson, the first American by choice pro to win the British Open, startled the gallery at St. Andrews by making the ball take a spin and come back a few feet. They're startled. They're like, oh, like the women are, dude, don't look, honey. That's crazy. Like startled. That's a word.
There's women in the audience.
What are you doing? Yeah, there's a women in here. You know, what are you doing to this? So check this out. When he made a hole-in-one in the 1921 championship, his ball landed on the green a couple of feet past the cup, then came back and dropped into the cup.
Oh.
So he made a backspin hole-in-one at a 1921 championship. You see what I'm saying? Like, so they're like, what in the hell is going on?
Yeah.
This guy here, who's George Greenwood, an old-time English golf writer, first says it's an accident, then it's magic. Yeah. And then a year later, Jock Hutchinson a year later, Jock Hutchinson drops a hole-in-one with the backspin. That's just changed everything here. It's now whenever you watch a golf game today, I dare you to find somebody not dropping a wedge shot or whatever onto the green. And every ball they hit rolls or spins backwards in that, dude.
Yeah, I like the one that they put the top spin on it, and he skims across the par 3 water hazard one, and the guy holding one day.
Oh, right.
Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that one. No.
It's like in the last so par 3 hole in one. I forget what it wasn't regulation play. It was kind of like exhibition play in practice, and they have like, do a goofy shot.
Yeah.
Everybody's see how close you can get to the pin by skipping it across the water. It's just kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And the guy holding one's it.
Damn.
Yeah.
But you see right here, like it's kind of like the last, like what we were talking about, a couple episodes ago, where you don't even think about like, hey, like you're going, I wonder when they started charging admission for golf. That's not something you even think about because it's like automatic. It's such an obvious thing. But there was a time when that was actually, invented. Like it was like an innovation, and there was a reason why it happened. Hagen was at the center of that. One of the most important innovations in golf, right? Now you watch golf on TV, and every single time you see, every single golfer, when they drop a shot on the green, it rolls backwards, right? It rolls backwards. Hagen, I'm telling you the story right here of the first backspin put on the ball in England at the British Open, and it changed the way they play. Yep. You see what I'm saying? Like it's not because they're like, oh my God, Jock Hutchinson sunk a hole-in-one with it. I'm sure that they were impressed by it. They're like, well, I better learn how to do that too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Plus it looks freaking cool. Oh, yeah. Like you are super freaking cool if you can make the ball spin backwards like that and then drop a shot. Like Jock Hutchinson was looking like the coolest guy in the world with that shot, man.
The dude's name was John Ram on the 16th hole of the Masters in 2020. He did that. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to show you this little video. Check it out.
Yeah, let me see. I'll take a look. I'm going to actually grab a drink real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, no. So here it goes. This is John Ram on 16 hitting this shot. Here he goes. It just skimmed across the water. The ball's rolling across the green. It's rolling a good 100 feet across the green.
Jeez,
rolling.
Oh
It's still going. It had to go 100 feet on the
oh
the
my
green.
God. Look at that shot.
Right in the hole. Look at that. So
I want to see his reaction. Is he happy about it?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's like, are you kidding me?
Oh my God. Look at that guy.
So it's kind of like it's just
dude, I would be way happier than that guy is.
It's a fun thing they do.
I would be so much more I would be so much happier than that guy. I'd be jumping. I'm like, well, you see that? See that?
I don't think that was a regulation shot. I think that I think they do. I think they just do that for fun.
Really? Like in the middle of like a tournament, I think
it's during like the warm-up rounds.
Oh, okay.
And I think they're like,
this is the ball of Tiger Woods.
This or that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's so it was 2020, and it's like, hey, you got a hole-in-one.
That is a great shot.
How do I get out of the share screen? Stop sheet. Okay, there we go.
So, anyways, that was
the Americans.
Awful,
that was awful audio for anybody watching, just listening to just the audio.
What on that?
Apologies.
Oh yeah, because
For-
we were kind of saying
so-
we described it,
A little
You
bit.
could- and
Yeah.
plus they can look it up
So
themselves. on
yeah,
their
so
own thing.
that's another episode you have to go see the video.
Yeah,
for.
this no,
All right.
we described it pretty
I
well.
wonder if we get spanked for
So-
copyright.
But so, anyways, this no, I think you're allowed to show pretty much anything as long as it's like if it's under like 30 seconds. I think you can show anything.
No, there's not. That's not.
I
true.
thought I heard
That's not
that.
true.
You
No,
can
that's
show
not true.
different
That's a wife
videos.
sale. That's a
Oh,
wife sale.
well, I thought I heard that somewhere.
It's
Because you could get flagged if you show something
no.
for more longer than
Yeah.
a certain amount of
no,
time.
That's
Oh, okay.
on for 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds.
Well, you're the
It's-
producer and everything,
yeah.
so you know
So,
better than I do.
yeah. Probably broke copyright there.
Okay.
All right.
Whatever. We're good. We're gonna.
So, but the backspin, it was like just astounding people there.
Yeah,
They
they
thought it
were
was
like,
magic.
"Oh my god!" And then, but they're like, but then and then Jim Barnes steps up and
Yeah.
and hits a spin back, a spinner too,
Oh,
and they're
well,
going,
yeah.
this is an American thing.
You and your American.
These Americans have figured out this, backspin on a golf ball, and then,
Yeah.
but the great thing is that Jock Hutchinson a year later, which is like the ultimate American name, Jock Hutchinson. That's a freaking awesome American name. He's like, Jock Hutchinson comes along the next year, and then sinks a hole in one with a backspin shot.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
that's an American thing. That's the first time these British, they haven't had a big championship like this. They haven't interacted with Americans in 7 years
Right.
or 6, 7 years. And now all of a sudden the Americans come over and like, look what we learned.
Yeah.
We learned we could put backspin on a ball and drop shots with it. You know what I mean? That's a huge thing.
Oh, yeah.
And especially when you see it every single day in
Sure.
golf,
Oh, yeah.
So if you are listening right now, next time you watch a golf or your game or you're talking to somebody about it, like, did you know? Like every time you see it, you remember Hagen.
Mhm.
Hagen was the first guy to actually do it. And then the other guys were showing them that, yeah, all Americans do that. It's an American thing, So anyways, yeah, so that's where that started.
Mhm.
And so, so like moving right along. So Hagen and Barnes, like, so leading up to the British Open, it's sort of a story that's like we've already seen a couple other times so far. Hagen and Barnes go to the clubhouse in Britain to go change into their gear, right, to get ready for golf. And so, what do you think happens, Jamie?
They don't let him in clubhouse.
Well, kind of, yeah. But along those lines,
Oh,
it's
it's just what he's wearing, right?
No, well, yeah. Why are you? You're gonna see. You're gonna see. You're
All right.
not wrong. They don't let him in, but it's a little bit more to it. So,
all right.
So anyways, so I invited Jim Barnes to drive down to Deal in my rented limousine so we could look over the course and get acquainted with the setup. I liked the impression of the Austin Daimler, complete with chauffeur and footman, made as we pulled up in front of the clubhouse. We climbed out of the car and strolled inside. Being early on an off day, we couldn't find anyone in the clubhouse, so we looked for the locker rooms. We were dressed for golf, except for changing our shoes. While we were making the change, the head locker steward, a little man in a white coat, came hurriedly in our direction. "Are you Mr. Hagen?" he inquired brusquely. "I am," I said, "and this is Mr. Barnes." "Gentlemen," he said importantly, "you're in the wrong place." "This is Deal?" I asked. "Oh, yes, indeed," he assured me, "but you gentlemen are professionals. You'll be using Mr. Hunter's golf shop for dressing." "Well, pardon me," I said, and walked out in my golf shoes, giving the other pair to my hired footman to put in the car. Jim and I went down to the golf shop to pay our respects to Mr. Hunter, the pro, and to look over the facilities. One long spike in the wall had several coats hanging on it and a far corner of many pairs of shoes. The toes turned up like skis were piled disconsolately. I guess the Oakland Hills Golf Club treatment had spoiled me, made me accustomed to being treated as any golfer, pro or amateur, should be. For I took one look at Jim and he followed me out of the place. I knew we weren't going to use that shop for a dressing room. "We'll use my car for a dressing room," I told Jim. "We can dress at the tavern in the village and then just change our shoes out here." I got my 2 caddies and we started. I used my footman as a 4 caddy to train him for the championship. I had told the chauffeur to meet us at the 18th green with my polo coat and to leave the car parked directly in front of the club. So he's got to go through all this rigmarole just to get ready for the thing.
Yeah.
When we played around to Deal's 18th green, the club's Mr. Secretary, a small but important little fellow with a wax mustache, stepped up to greet us. During our walk back to the clubhouse where my car was parked, he apologized for the incident earlier that morning, but explained again that professionals were not allowed in the clubhouse. I told him I was sorry too, but we did not know the rules, and henceforth we used my car. I'll be living at the nearby pub, so I can easily change my shoes and sweater in the car. I'll be living at the nearby pub.
I love that you said that earlier. We'll change at the tavern. I'm like, we're going for drinks.
He's saying I'll be living at the nearby pub. That's where he's living at. I'll be there drinking up every night.
Don't make don't make me go get cocktails.
So I can easily change my shoes and sweater in the car. He didn't like the idea of parking my car in front of the clubhouse either, and of having the chauffeur meet me at the 18th green. However, I followed that custom throughout my stay. So he walks. They're so used to American golf, where he's been at the Oakland Hills Country Club in Detroit, of course.
Right.
And he goes into Oakland Hills, and he's so used to going to the clubhouse there now. And early in his career,
these are the old ways.
Early in his career, it was forbidden.
Sure.
We talked about already, his only experience at the Rochester Club was just that one time when the guy was using him to go get his rival drunk, and he was running there to the bar to grab drinks for him. But at Oakland Hills in Detroit, he had been at a place where meritocracy was it. Yeah. It was not about aristocracy. It was not about the old guard protecting their little world by saying you're not good enough to be part of our amateur world of aristocracy club.
Yeah.
So, but in Detroit, where he comes there where people from all over the country are flocking with ideas to make money and this and that, he is welcome there as a regular guy. As like, why wouldn't you be able to come in the clubhouse, man? You're a pro. You're our main guy. You're a celebrity. We want you everywhere in this club. You can come anywhere you want. So he was so used to it from the Oakland Hills Country Club world
with those old ways.
Yeah. So he goes to Britain, and he just forgets.
Yeah.
He forgets he hasn't been rejected from a clubhouse in years.
Sure.
And so he walks in with Jim Barnes. Hey, Jim, let's go into the clubhouse and get ready. Where's the locker room at? The guy's like, what are you doing?
No.
What are you doing here, right? And Hagen's like, what do you mean?
You vagrants, get out
And so now Hagen, this really flares up his going, I'm going to screw you over, buddy. How in the hell, you're going to throw me out of here?
Yeah.
It's one thing to not be allowed there and to kind of honor the rules. It's another thing for the guy to be like, you're a second-class citizen. It's time for you to leave.
Do you really have to park your car out front?
Yeah, don't embarrass yourself.
Is that where you really want to park your car?
Yeah, then he goes, he didn't like the fact that I was parking my car out front either. He's like, he goes, okay, we won't be in the clubhouse, but we're just gonna park our clubhouse out front, the Austin Daimler with a chauffeur and a footman. He's got a footman with it. It's awesome.
There's a bar in that car. There's a bar in the car. He's hitting the bar at the tavern.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm gonna be living at the pub anyways, so that's where he'd be at. It's like, send my mail to the pub. But that's what I'm saying. Like, so here he is.
Yeah.
This is This is what is happening in America. That it doesn't matter. Like, it's starting that idea is starting to shape. It's starting to change.
Right.
Professional golfers are starting to become big timers, and it's not even. It's ridiculous. Why wouldn't you be allowed in the clubhouse, right?
Yeah.
And so it's saying that idea in America has already started to change to such a degree that not only him, but Jim Barnes walked in there too, acting like. I mean, Jim Barnes wasn't the Oakland Hills guy, so this idea wasn't unique to Oakland Hills.
Right.
And so Jim Barnes and Hagen walk in like, where's the clubhouse? Let's go. And they're like, you gentlemen are, lower level. You're lower class. You got to go somewhere else. So I'm saying that's another element of America that's now coming in conflict. Coming into conflict. American golf that's coming into conflict with this British, this British style. So
regime.
This like basically pre-World War I mentality. Yeah. So anyways, so that's them. Trying to get in the clubhouse. So.
We haven't even played the damn game yet.
Yeah. So anyways, so we haven't even played this. So this is like the sort of entry point to the game.
And then they go.
No, there's a little bit to it. So anyways, so Hagen has a singular sort of memory from the game, from the actual tournament. And what's interesting is it's not really the actual game itself, right? It's not the actual play. So he says, the memory England carried of me from that first attempt at the British Open was not of my golf, but of my golfing attire. So the clothes he wore, what he remembers most about the British Open is the clothes he wore. Okay. And they wrote much about my clothes in the British papers. The native players, particularly the amateurs, took great pride in frayed tweed jackets, crumpled knickerbockers, and even boots. I appeared on the first tee that starting day dressed in one of the 12 beautifully harmonizing outfits I'd brought over with me. I wore a black sleeveless pullover sweater, white silk shirt with collar and dark tie, custom tailored white flannel knickers, and black and white sports shoes. For a break from the black and white, I wore gray golf stockings. Golfers and gallery alike made a special tour around me to take in my sartorial splendor. He's sitting there going, bask in my sartorial splendor. He's describing, that's why I brought this little graphic where it's like you can kind of see it. Like these are 1920s, 1920 picture of Hagen versus Varden.
Varden's kind of frumpy.
Yeah, you got like the class, your kind of tweed jacket, your tweed pants, nothing ostentatious. They got the high, the knickerbockers, the legging, like neat, pants, pantaloon type of things. And so does Hagen, but you can see the difference. Hagen's got the two-tone shoes.
Yeah, it's tailored. It looks very tailored and crisp.
Totally.
The other one looks frumpy and
exactly. He's kind of like got the kind of laid, like the front, like the tweed. And so Hagen, they're going, look at this guy. This guy is, he's in the way he describes it too. He says, I appeared on that first tee, the starting day, dressed in one of the 12 beautifully harmonizing outfits I'd brought over with me. And we've already talked in several different examples about Hagen, like when he first saw that one guy, he wanted to look just like him.
Yeah.
So he saved up his money to get the scarf and the shirt and all this. And then he basically just copied that guy's look. And then every single tournament thereafter, he was adding to it and trying to do his own thing and kind of come up with his own thing. But it's like that, the look is Hagen's bringing out this flashy kind of this whole new look, which is this American style. People are going, this is another thing coming from America. Imagine this Hagen, this best golfer in America, and he's got this new look that they're going, oh, who's this guy? This is golf, man. This is the new, this is the new modern thing. This is the post World War I, roaring 20s golf look. And so he's changing the fashion of golf.
And those two-tone sports shoes.
Yes, you can see it in the picture.
That's still today.
Yeah, look at him. He's rocking it. That's what I'm saying. They didn't rock. They're wearing boots. He said they even wore boots on the course, man. Right. He's like, I'm not wearing boots. I'm wearing two-tone. Look how much time he takes in describing it. He's like, my memory. Yeah. He even says that's his memory. He says, my memory, the memory England carried of me from that attempt at the British Open was not my golf.
Nope.
But my golfing attire.
That's it.
That's it. So that's what I'm saying. He's awesome, man. He's like, I don't think the game was secondary. But maybe it's because it's the way that he played. So that's
yeah. So what do we ultimately know? Are we getting into that?
Yeah, we're getting into it right now.
How did he do?
Right. Not good. Real bad. Real bad. In fact, I would just skip over that section.
Well, those links courses, man, they are unforgiving.
Well, that's what he's
and he's notorious. He's notorious for a bad shot and then making it up. There's no recovering from a bad shot.
No, that's what he's saying
on a true links.
Yeah.
That's what you got saying. A bad shot, you are done like dinner.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what he's saying in this. He's saying he actually says we'll read about. We'll see what happened to him. So he says, I had a practice. I played one practice round at Deal in 72. I mean, he got a 72 in a practice, so he did get an actual practice round at got a 72. But when I began to play in the championship, it was another story. I didn't start until noon, and some early scores had already been posted. Nothing sensational yet, however. I had a fair-sized gallery waiting to see me play, mostly Americans who expected to see me in my best form. I played fairly well in the first 9 holes. I had a score of 37. But coming back, well, that was really something. I've never in my life seen such wind. Women were holding umbrellas over them while they passed sand traps to be protected from the grit, sand, and pebbles that blew across the fairway.
Wow.
On one tee shot, the ball stayed up in the wind so long, I turned my back on it to keep from being smacked in the face when the current carried it back towards me. So on a tee shot, he hits it and he has to dodge because it's about to hit him in the face. His own tee shot. That's what he's saying, like a boomerang coming back. So he said I needed a catcher's mask. That shot didn't even carry the rough in front of the tee. The whipping, blustering wind was a new and puzzling experience for me. I was pressing my shots through the fairway and going for everything on the green, with the sad result that my score mounted to a 48, giving me an 85 for a total. I had decided in the beginning that a 300 would not get me anywhere, and I was going all out, but I would gladly have settled for a 75 on each of those first 2 rounds. When I felt myself slipping, I went for every shot as if it were my last. When I finished, I said to Dickie, "Did you ever see me play such terrible golf?" He admitted he had left me at the end of the first 9 holes because he thought he was jinxing my game. He had followed some of the British, but hadn't seen anyone playing much good golf. So this guy's supposed to be reporting. He's just like, I stopped watching you after 9.
I couldn't watch, dude.
I thought I was jinxing you. That's a likely story. Hagen still thinks.
And it got worse.
That's what's kind of funny is Hagen still thinks that Dickie was he left him because he actually thought he was jinxing his game. If you read between the lines here, Dickie, he's supposed to be covering Hagen for the American papers. Dickie probably just couldn't watch it anymore. Like he's like, I thought I was jinxing your game, so I walked away. He may have left like just almost like Hagen walks us into like, I can't watch you, Hagen. You're getting destroyed, right? So he said Dickie had followed some of the British, but hadn't seen anyone playing much good golf. George Duncan was going badly, and Abe Mitchell with a 74 led him by several strokes. Dickie said, just keep going and try for second or third if you can't win. And Hagen says, I don't want second. If I can't win, I don't care where I finish. I told him I won't be any better tomorrow, maybe, but I'm going out to win. I figure I'll either be under 70 or I'll be up over 80. I was determined to beat the British pros, and they were just as determined to take the Americans. We all extended our efforts way beyond the stretching point. I tried to keep fighting. I suppose I should have picked up my ball, as most golfers would. I've never done that, and I intended to show the British that I could take a beating and still smile. I took the beating all right. George Duncan won with a not too credible score of 303. I trailed 53rd in a field of 54. One of the British sports writers reported that finished this way. Duncan finished, but not too triumphantly, and made his exit as if he had lost. Yet there was the American, Hagen, finishing up with his head up as if he himself had won instead of finishing far down the also-rans. But it took Deal's little secretary to polish me off. I'm sorry you didn't do better, Hagen, he gloated, but golf over here is very difficult. I do hope you'll come back some future year and try again. Don't worry about me, I told him. You'll see my name on that cup. He did too, no fewer than 4 times.
There you go.
So Hagen's coming back.
All right.
But you see what he says. So but what's great is that Hagen took a beating and still was like, hey, this is great. You know, like that's what the guy's saying there. He said one of the British sports writers reported that finished this way. Duncan, who had won, finished but not too triumphantly, and made his exit as if he had lost. Like he was like kind of demure and like, you know, great, you know. And then yet there was the American, Hagen, finishing with his head up as if he himself had won instead of finishing far amongst the also-rans. So Hagen is like, you know, he's like, you guys doing? This is great, you know. I had a great time, you know. He's like this. But it was the secretary, the guy, you know, the original guy who that wasn't happy about him parking in that says, you know, hey, I hope you know, it's very difficult over here. You know, golf is Hagen's the greatest golfer in the United States, winning all these different championships. He comes over here and finishes 53 out of 54. Man, yeah. So they're like, well, you know, Hagen, golf is difficult over here. You know, it's not over in America. I'm sure you're the greatest champion around, but here you're 53 out of 54. You know, like, so that's brutal. You know, that's a brutal way for that guy to come over there and try to throw salt in the wound. Yeah. So anyways, so that's, you know, that's Hagen's experience in 1919. He definitely does not win the US Open.
Just did
1920. Yeah, 1920.
Did not get that open.
Yeah, he doesn't get the job. But how much time we got left? We got 5 minutes or so.
No, we're already over an hour, but whatever.
All right, good. We're not gonna. So there is a like sort of light at the end of the, you know, happy ending to today's story. So Hagen does, you know, he finishes 53rd out of 54, which everybody out there is probably just tore up over this, right? Going, oh my God, Hagen can't win. We're hanging on every story. Hagen's been winning everything. How can he lose this one? So there's a little consolation prize. So we'll wrap it up. We wrap it up on a good, you know, positive note.
Hooks back up with the actress.
No. That would be awesome. In the movie, we can write that in. Right. That's awesome. That would be a great. You see some pictures over. That would be
drinking. That would be a great with Connie at the tavern.
That would be a great finale to the story, no matter regardless of winning or losing. But anyway, so 1920, Hagen and Jim Barnes and Duncan, who won the British Open. Yeah. And Abe Mitchell, these guys, basically the foursome, the 4 guys that have played at that little, you know, the little tournament prior to the British Open, the 4 guys. There's the French Open is about to play, right? So there's the British Open, there's the French Open. So it's a national. It's not a major, but it's a national title, right? Sure. So they're like, well, hell, let's go to France, right? Yeah, and Hagen wants to see, and Hagen also wants to, which is interesting. He talks about how he wanted to go and see the battlefields of World War I. Oh, yeah. So these things are still raw, right? He's going over there to check out the battlefields of World War I at this point. So he's like, well, I can go see the battlefields, and I can also go see, you know, it would also potentially like come back with a little bit of self-respect if I go win this French Open, right? And so he goes over. And so just like when he arrives at the British clubhouse, Hagen is going to have another incident with regards to not being able to go to the French clubhouse, but this one is way worse.
Oh my God.
This one is way worse, right? So this is so as they're leading up to the to this French Open 1920, yeah. And so he says, I had intended making a trip to Paris for some fun after the fiasco at Deal. But during the time I was in London, George Duncan, Abe Mitchell, and I became very good friends. So we decided the three of us would enter the French Open. I take it back. Jim Barnes wasn't there. It was Jim Barnes is part of like a ton of other stories with him.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim Barnes doesn't look like was there, but so it was the two guys, Duncan and Mitchell. Like I say, Duncan had won the U.S. Open or the British Open, and Abe Mitchell. But during the time I was in London, George Duncan, Abe Mitchell, and I became very good friends. So we decided the three of us would enter the French Open. The accommodations for pros at Deal had seemed to me unbelievably bad and inhospitable. But Le Bouley, which is the course in France, so Le Bouley was much worse.
Oh.
We were directed to an old and very much in use stable, equipped with several nails for our clothes and a table for refreshments, we were told. The vile odor and the hundreds of flies swarming about added to the disgust I felt. Duncan and Mitchell had grown up in England and were long accustomed to the acceptance of the rigid ruling which barred pros from using or even entering the clubhouses of the famed old British golf courses. But we had a meeting and they agreed with me that it was an impossible situation. This place is so bad. This is impossible.
Jeez.
It's a barn.
Yeah.
They redirected them to a barn.
Oh my God.
So the one, keep in mind, George Duncan had just won the British Open, and Walter Hagen's the best golfer in the United States, and they're directed to a stable, right? That's how they treat pros out there.
Yeah.
And so, with their concurrence and presence to back me up, I strode into the office of the president, Monsieur Pierre Deschamps, and put it to him bluntly: we were to change and eat in the clubhouse, or else. And that or else carried plenty of weight for Duncan as the current holder of the British Open title, Abe Mitchell as the winner of the British Informal Open in 1919 and runner-up to Duncan in 1920, and I, as the American Open title holder, were definitely the drawing cards for his French Open. If we three withdrew, he was in big trouble. And the tall Frenchman aristocrat knew when he was stymied. He gave into our demand, but this was the payoff. He would allow only the three of us to enter the clubhouse. None of the other pros were to enjoy the privilege. The shock of winning our point was so great for Mitchell that Duncan and I had to half push him into the sanctified area of the members and the amateurs. For those two British golfers, this was a major revolution we had staged. So they had to basically drag Mitchell in. He's like,
no, we shouldn't. It's crazy.
This is insane. I can't believe
we can't go in
we
there.
We can't go in here. This is everything. This goes up against everything I've ever learned.
Wow.
This is mind-blowing. They said they almost had to drag Mitchell and I had to half push him into the sanctified area. Like he's going into the holy of holies in the church, right? Like, for those two, this was a major revolution. This is an American.
But it still was just the three of them. All the other pros playing are like,
true.
Off to the stables.
That was the concession they made. However, but it's these little steps. Like when you're talking about some of the biggest changes that have ever happened in the history of the world, all these changes start with a single, even if it's a miniature breakthrough.
The camel's nose is in the tent.
Yes. In this case, they are, this was a major revolution we had staged. Like this is as I said from like one of the first episodes of this Walter Hagen segment that we're doing, is that this is going to be a recurring theme. They go to this clubhouse, they're rejected, they're denied, whatever it is, and now Hagen is starting to fight back.
Right.
Yeah. And these two British guys, they were led by an American saying, screw these guys, man. We're coming into their clubhouse they're like, this is an impossible situation. They're not going to the stable to change. And Hagen, rather than say, okay, well, they'll let us go to a local hotel to change, they'll buy us a hotel room to change in. No. Hagen says, screw that. We're going to the clubhouse.
Yeah.
These two guys are like, what are you talking about, Hagen? And the one, Duncan's like, I kind of like that idea. And Mitchell's goes, we can't do that. Are you out of your mind? That's the holy ground. And so I'm saying, like, that's sort of the final example of this American invasion, like this American golf. America has bred its own golfing elements, and it's bringing this over to Europe, and it's starting to change the game there. You see what I'm saying? So And you can just see it in this one year, the numerous things that have happened that are influential, massively influential. You see, so so Hagen, so the sort of like you say the light at the end of the tunnel, the little cherry on top of the cake or whatever, is that Hagen beats Eugene Laffitte in a 36-hole playoff to win the 1920 French Open.
Nice.
And so this was the second year that Hagen had won a national Open championship. Like last year, he'd won the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
In this case, he wins the French Open. So it's not a major, but he wins a national Open, which is like the country's like best, trophy.
Yep.
So this is the second of 11 straight years.
Wow.
Where Hagen will win a national Open championship in some regard. You know what I mean? Like, so like whether it's a French Open or a Mexico Open or whatever it is, he's going to win a national Open every year for after this for another 9 years straight.
Dang.
Yeah. So you can see, so the American invasion, that's a wrap.
Yeah. Wow. All right, cool. So, wow, we really swam around in that one for a while.
Yeah, but it's, I think, like I say, I think it was a good, it's, I think it's well titled, this was the influence of American golf, sort of, which, the American golf is growing in its own little world. And then it comes over to Britain. They're like, what do you guys mean you don't spin the ball? What do you mean what do you mean you don't have backspin on the ball? What do you mean what do you mean we still can't come into the clubhouses? What are you talking about? What do you mean you don't dress like kind of flashy and cool like we do? What do you mean? I mean, like this is it's a totally, their American culture, American golf is, this is the roaring 20s. This is when America is blossoming into the America that is going to be like the economic superpower of the world.
Right.
And this is American culture is spreading, and you can see right here an example of the spread of American culture into a major institution like British golf, which has already been huge for years.
All right. Well, that was a ton of fun, man. We got more to do with Walter, though. Lots more to do. We're only in 1920. Yep.
We got to get up to 1935.
That's it.
And I don't think we're necessarily going to take it year by year, but there's just been some really good years in here.
That was good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks for coming along for the party. Thanks for Chris for the memes. You're cracking me up. And thanks everybody for listening. And we'll do it again. The website, DetroitCityOfChampions.com. And we'll see you next time. Detroit City of Champions, the podcast.